Three men, one photo, and the world just changed. While you were scrolling your phone this week, something happened that most news channels viewed. And in a few years, this photo may be in history books. Look at these three men. One of them controls the largest oil exports on the planet. One of them commands the second largest army in NATO. And one of them has nuclear weapons. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan. Few days ago, they met in the holiest city in Islam, Mecca, and signed an agreement with one simple, enormous rule. Attack any one of us, and you are at war with all of us. Sound familiar, right? It should. This is exactly the rule NATO is built on. The rule that has protected Europe and America for 75 years. But this is not NATO. This is something the world has never seen before. Some are already calling it the birth of a Muslim NATO. Hey everyone, my name is Arora. Hope you're doing well. Today, in this video, I will show you what this agreement actually says, why it happened now, who it's really aimed at, and why Washington, Tel Aviv, and New Delhi are all quietly panicking. So stay tuned till the end because it's gonna get very interesting. Let me first tell you exactly what happened with no exaggeration. On Friday, August 7th, 2026, in Mecca, three leaders signed a document called the Mecca Joint Defence Agreement. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, the man who runs the world's biggest oil exporter. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, leader of the country with NATO's second largest military, and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan, who arrived with someone very important standing beside him, Pakistan's Army Chief, General Asim Munir. In Pakistan, the Army Chief is arguably more powerful than the Prime Minister. His presence tells you the military is fully behind this. The core of the agreement is one sentence. An armed attack against any one of the three countries will be treated as an attack against all three. This is what experts call collective defense. It is the same principle as NATO's famous Article 5, the rule that says if you attack one NATO member, you are at war with all 32. Now, this didn't come from nowhere. Let me give you the timeline because the timeline tells you the real story. On September 2025, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan signed two-country defense pact in Riyadh. Any aggression against one is aggression against both. The world notices because Pakistan is the only Muslim majority country with nuclear weapons. January 2026, reports emerge that Turkey wants to join, and talks are at the advanced stage. February 2026, a war erupts, the US and Israel against Iran. The Middle East is set on fire. August 7th, 2026, in the middle of that war, the three countries formalized the pact in Mecca, the holiest city in Islam. The location itself is a message. So the obvious question, why now? That's where this story gets really interesting. To understand why this pact exists, you need to understand one thing first. For the last 8 years, the Middle East ran on unwritten deal with America. The deal was simple. Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia sell oil to the world, buy hundreds of billions of dollars of American weapons, and in exchange, America protects them. America was the region's bodyguard, and that deal is now dead. And here is what killed it. Blow number one, the Iran war. Since February 2026, the US and Israel have been at war with Iran. And here is the part most people missed. Iran and its allies didn't just strike back at Israel. Missiles and drones hit Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE, Oman, even Jordan, Saudi Arabia found itself under fire from multiple directions. And here's the key: Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states were not consulted before this war started. They woke up one day to find out their region is in flames. A war they never agreed to, threatening their oil exports, their economies, their massive development projects. And analysts reported the Gulf states were deeply offended that Washington never took them into confidence. Blow number two: America's conditions. President Trump made it clear that if Saudi Arabia wants a stable nuclear agreement with the US, it must first normalize relationships with Israel. In other words, American protection now comes with political conditions attached. From Riyadh's view, the bodyguard is now charging extra and setting rules. Blow number three: pattern. From Gulf's perspective, they watched Iran getting attacked and asked themselves a simple question: if it happened to Iran today, who is next tomorrow? Several analysts noted that regional states now fear or dominate Israel, backed unconditionally by America, that can strike anywhere without consequences. This pact is not really aimed at Iran. Iranian state media actually responded to by calling Muslim unity, and Iran maintains working relationships with both Turkey and Pakistan. Read between the lines. This alliance is a hedge against Israel and a message to America. Three major US partners just told Washington, your protection alone is no longer enough. We're building our own. As one Turkish analyst put it perfectly, Ankara is not trading NATO for Mecca. Turkey is investing in second insurance policy in a neighborhood where the first one has stopped paying out reliably. That sentence is the entire story. Now let's look at why these three specific countries together are so powerful, because each one brings something that others don't have. Analysts describes it as a perfect combination. Saudi Arabia brings the money, the world's largest oil exporter, trillions in sovereign wealth. Saudi Arabia can fund weapons programs, buy technology, and bankroll the entire alliance. And it already does it. Just days before summit, Saudi Arabia rolled over more than $5 billion in deposits, propping up Pakistan's economy. Pakistan's financial survival literally runs through Riyadh. Turkey brings the military industry. Turkey has NATO's second largest army. But more importantly, Turkey has become one of the world's fastest growing weapons exporters, especially drones. Turkish Bayraktar drone changed the course of the wars in Ukraine, Libya, and Azerbaijan. In 2023, Saudi Arabia signed what Turkey called its largest defense export deal ever for Turkish drones. Turkey is the arms factory of the alliance. Pakistan brings manpower and the bomb. Pakistan has one of the largest army in the world, decades of combat experience, and the elephant in the room, nuclear weapons. The only Muslim country that has nuclear weapons. Pakistan has defended Saudi Arabia's holy cities for decades under bilateral agreements. Now that protection is formalized in a three-way alliance. Money, weapons, nuclear deterrence. Together, that's a skeleton of a genuine military bloc. And here is the undercover detail. Turkey is a NATO member. Think about what that means. A country inside the Western Alliance just signed a separate binding collective defense pact with two non-NATO members. Legal experts are already asking what happens if Turkey's NATO obligation and Mecca obligation ever conflict. An active NATO country building a parallel alliance is unprecedented, and it creates a massive complication for Washington and Brussels that almost nobody's talking about. So, who is recalculating right now? Three capitals in particular. Israel. For years, Israel's regional strategy was built on two pillars: contain Iran and normalize relations with Gulf Arab states through economies and technology. The assumption was that trade would eventually seal permanent partnerships. The Mecca Pact breaks that math. Saudi Arabia is no longer an isolated Gulf state negotiating alone. It is now formally linked to Turkish drones and aerospace technology and to Pakistan military capacity. Israeli defense planners are reported to be completely revising their risk assessments because any future military action in the region now carries the risk of triggering a multi-front response. And notice this detail. On the day before the signing, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu had a phone call with India's Prime Minister Modi, which brings us to India. Pakistan just gained two powerful formal alliances. If a future India-Pakistan conflict erupts, like the one in May 2025 that I covered in my Waters War video, does Saudi money and Turkish drone technology now stand behind Pakistan? The honest answer is probably not automatically, and I will explain why in a moment. India has publicly stayed calm. Saudi Arabia has excellent relations with India and has no interest in threatening them. But the anxiety is real enough that India's foreign minister had to issue a fake news alert, debunking a claim that India was rushing to sign its own defense pact with Israel in response. When government start issuing denials, the pressure is real, and analysts widely expect that India-Israel strategic partnership to accelerate as a direct consequence of Mecca. Which brings us to another one, which is Washington. Three of America's most important partners just build a security structure that doesn't include America. That is the quiet earthquake here. It doesn't mean they're becoming enemies of US. Saudi Arabia still hosts American bases. Turkey is still in NATO. Pakistan still cooperates with Washington. But the era when the US was the only security guarantor in the region ended on August 7th, 2026. And two countries are quietly smiling, China and Russia. For Beijing, a Middle East managed by regional powers rather than America protects its Belt and Road trade routes and its massive investment in Pakistan. Analysts note both China and Russia see the Mecca Pact as confirmation that the world is becoming multipolar. Exactly the world China has been building towards, which I covered in my first video on this channel. Every thread connects. Now, every big story has two sides, and this one is no different because there is a very big question mark hanging over this alliance. Paper is cheap. The question is, will these countries will actually fight for each other? And here is the thing. We already have a clue because the alliance was already tested once, and it's a story almost nobody's covering. During the Iran war, earlier this year, Iran reportedly struck Saudi territory directly in retaliation for US and Israel's strikes. At that moment, the Saudi-Pakistan Defense Pact from September 2025 was already in force. An attack on one is an attack on both. Remember? So what did Pakistan do? Nothing. No military response, no formal invocation of the pact, no public commitment to act. Pakistan chose restraint because Pakistan shares a border with Iran, has its own relationship with Tehran, has zero interest in a war with its neighbor to defend Saudi Arabia from missiles. This is the secret truth about Mecca Agreement. It has no automatic trigger, unlike people imagine about NATO. Nothing in these pacts forces anyone to go to the war. Even NATO's Article 5 has only been revoked once in 75 years. After 9/11, collective defense is never really about the treaty text. It is about political will in the moment. So what is the Mecca Agreement really then? Experts describe it best as strategic hedge, an insurance policy, a signal, a foundation that could grow into something much bigger. Whether it becomes a real Muslim NATO depends on what comes next. Do they build joint military command? Do they run joint exercises? Do other countries join? That last question is the one to watch because Turkey already has defense agreements with Qatar, Syria, and Libya. Analysts are openly discussing whether Egypt, Indonesia, and other Muslim majority countries could eventually plug into this structure. If that happens, if this grows from 3 countries into 10, then August 7th, 2026 will be remembered the way we remember the founding of NATO in 1949. And if it doesn't, it will still be remembered as the day America's monopoly on Middle East security officially ended. Let me zoom out, because if you have been following this channel, you'll see that this isn't an isolated event. This is a piece of a much bigger puzzle we have been assembling together, video by video. In my first video, I have showed you how China is building an alternative world order, trade routes, currency systems, institutions that don't run through Washington. In my water wars video, we saw countries weaponizing rivers because no global rules exist to stop them and no institutions to step in. And now, the Mecca Agreement. 3 American partners building their own security system because they no longer trust the old one. Do you see the pattern? The old world order, the one built after World War II, where America guaranteed security and everyone played by Western rules, is dissolving. And nobody is announcing it. It's just happening, piece by piece, region by region. What replaces it is what political scientists call a multipolar world. A world with multiple centers of powers instead of just one. China dominates East Asia. America holds the West, and in between regional powers like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, India, and Brazil stop picking sides and start building their own clubs. The Mecca Agreement is the Middle East declaration that it intends to manage its own security. And here's the final thought that should stick with you. For 8 years, the question in every world crisis was, what will America do? We are entering an era where more and more the question will be, what will the regional powers do? This is the fundamentally different planet, more flexible but more unpredictable, more independent but with more players who can start the wars. Whether that's better or worse, history will judge, but it is happening right now. And August 7th, 2026 was one of the days it became official. Before we close, here are 5 specific things to watch out in next coming months. These signals will tell you whether the Mecca Agreement becomes a real military bloc or stays as a piece of paper. Number 1. Joint military exercises. If Saudi Arabia, Turkish, and Pakistani forces start training together regularly, the alliance is getting real muscles. Number 2. A joint command structure. NATO works because it has permanent joint headquarters. If the Mecca Pact announces anything similar, that's a real game changer. Number 3. New members. Watch Qatar, Egypt, Azerbaijan, Indonesia, Malaysia. Any new signature transforms this from a triangle into a block. 4. The nuclear question. Watch whether Saudi Arabia's civil nuclear program advances, and with whose help. If American conditions push Riyadh toward other partners. That's one of the biggest stories of the decade. Number 5. The first real test. The next time any of the three countries is attacked, what do the other two will actually do? Words or actions? That moment, whenever it comes, will define everything. I'll be watching all 5. And when they will move, you'll be hearing from me on this channel. 80 years ago, a handful of countries met and created NATO. And that decision shaped the entire world. A few days ago, 3 countries met in Mecca. We don't know if their agreement will shape the next 80 years. But we know this. The world's most important relationships are being renegotiated right now in real time, not in secret, in plain sight. Most people just aren't paying attention. You are. That's why you're here. If this video helped you to understand what just happened, share it with one person who should know. Because right now, almost nobody is covering this story in simple language. Drop a comment below. Do you think this becomes a real Muslim NATO? Or stays as a piece of paper? I read every comment below and I genuinely want to know what you think. If you like this video, please do not forget to hit the like or subscribe button. And I will see you in the next one.